boys won't hesitate to run up on your boy. 엉덩이 빵빵빵 남자들은 탐탐탐 내 입술 냠냠냠 어디 가도 당당당 등장은 짠짠짠 띠자 빵빵빵.
Assalamualaikum and good morning everyone. Okay, first of all, I would like to tell you discrimination is about the unjust or prejudicial treatment of different categories of people, especially on the ground of race, age, sex or disability. Discrimination can occur in a variety of places, especially in the workplace. Discrimination in the workplace happens when a person of a group of people is treated unfairly or unequally because of specific characteristics. It can happen between co-workers with job applicants or between employees and their employers. Whether on purpose or by accident, discrimination regardless of intention is illegal. Okay guys, hear me out. Around 56% of Malaysian women have experienced at least one form of gender discrimination in the workplace, according to Voice of Malaysian Women on Discrimination and Harassment in the Workplace survey undertaken by Women's Aid Organization WAO in collaboration with agency VSI. This includes receiving comments or questions about the marital status or plans to start a family, being passed over for promotion in favor of less qualified colleges, and being asked to do tasks that are not as of male colleges, such as making coffee and preparing refreshment. However, for today, we will focus more on gender discrimination, especially on women.
The first issue about discrimination among workers is unfair dismissal, which is unfair dismissal is where an employer terminates an employee's contract without a fair reason to do so. Unfair dismissal can be claimed by the employee if the employer had a fair reason but handled the dismissal using the wrong procedure. In simple terms, according Employment Act 1955 in Section 20, subsection 1, if you are dismissed without just cause or excuse, your dismissal is unfair. The Act does not define without just cause or excuse. The circumstance of each case will determine if the dismissal was without just cause or excuse. The next relevant legislation covering unfair dismissal is the Industrial Relations Act of 1967, when an employee considered that he or she had been dismissed without just cause or excuse by their employer. They could file a representation under Section 20 of the Industrial Relations Act 1967 at the nearest Industrial Relations Department. In addition, did you know that on average, approximately 1,700 cases per year are referred to the industrial courts? I don't know if either, right? According to the infographic that I found, it stated that there are 1,700 unfair dismissal cases referred to the industrial courts each year, and most cases involve employees in Malaysia are terminated for misconduct.
The next cases of unfair dismissal is the case of Nur Fadilia Ahmad Saiken took his case to court. A woman was given 40,000 compensation after being fired for being pregnant. The case happened to an untrained former backup teacher, Nur Fadilia Ahmad Saiken, who was fired from her job after being found 3 months pregnant. The Shah Alam High Court in 2011 subsequently ruled that pregnancy was not a valid reason for the Selangor Education Department to deny Nur Fadilia's employment as an untrained backup teacher. After going through many court processes, finally, in 2018, the Federal Court ruled that Nur Fadilia was awarded 40,000 in general damages. Additionally, if you are also the victim of an unfair dismissal, you can actually make a complaint to the Director General of Industrial Relations within 60 days of being dismissed. Often, such cases will be resolved through prior negotiations. However, if the negotiations are not successful, the case will be taken to the Industrial Court for trial. There, the court will look at and evaluate all the arguments from both parties before making any decision. If the case is in favor of the employee, he will get certain benefits such as his force be returned or compensated. So this proves that an employer cannot arbitrarily fire any of his employees without a reasonable reason, let alone a woman just because the woman is pregnant.
Next, the first reason behind the issue of unfair dismissal are about health and safety issue, which is employees have the right not to be dismissed or treated unfairly because of they have taken action over a health and safety issue. For example, complaining about unsafe working conditions. The dismissal might be classed as automatically unfair if this was the main reason the employee was dismissed. In addition, taking action over a health and safety issue can conclude, for example, employee refusing to work in the situation where the employee believes there are other people in serious danger and raising a reasonable health and safety concern with an employer. Next, the other reason for the unfair dismissal is employee does not follow a full and fair procedure. If the employer does not follow the full and fair procedure, an employee could have a case for unfair dismissal, even if the reason for dismissing them was valid. The procedure the employer follows will be taken into account if the employee claims for unfair dismissal and the case reached an employment tribunal.
Next, restriction on dismissal of female employee after eligible period. Under the Employment Act 1955, Section 42, Subsection 1, where a female employee remains absent from her work after the expiration of the eligible period as a result of illness certified by a registered medical practitioner to arise out of her pregnancy and confinement and to render her unfit for her work. It should be an offence until her absence exceeds a period of 90 days after the expiration of the eligible period for her employer to terminate her services or give her notice of termination of service.
So the second issue in the gender discrimination is sexual harassment. Sexual harassment in Employment Act 1955 is defined as any unwanted conduct of a sexual nature, whether verbal, non-verbal, visual, gestural or physical, directed at a person which is offensive or humiliating or is a threat to his well-being, arising out of and in the course of his employment. This is only limited to workplace sexual harassment. Any employee may lodge a complaint of sexual harassment against another employee or employer. Similarly, a complaint of sexual harassment may be made by an employer against an employee. Section 81D of the Employment Act 1955 imposed a legal obligation on the employer to inquire into any sexual harassment complaint upon receipt of such a complaint. The recent study, in conjunction with International Women's Day 2022, showed that 35% of Malaysian women feel that sexual harassment merits the top spot for issues women face in the country, Malaysia. This shows that how important it is for us to talk openly about sexual harassment that happens in the workplace. Also, from the survey that have been done by Voices of Malaysian Women on Discrimination and Harassment in the Workplace, stated that overall 62% of women say that they have experienced one or more forms of sexual harassment. This suggests that the majority of Malaysian women have actually experienced sexual harassment in their workplace. Of this, 39% have experienced offensive sexual jokes or innuendos, 24% have experienced unwelcome touching or grabbing, 22% have experienced sexual gestures, body movements or looks, 18% have experienced stalking behavior, and 16% have experienced verbal sexual abuse.
For the sexual harassment case, we focus on the case of Shamshir Alam Khairuddin versus IBFIM that happened in 21st February 2019. The case started when the claimant grabbed the complainant's arm and said, "Sedap juga pegang dengan kau ni." And when the complainant tried to pull back, he pulled her hand again and said, "Cantik juga jam." Then the claimant proceeded to rub and caress the complainant's back while uttering, "Okey ke, stres kerja ke, banyak kerja ke?" From this case, we can see that sexual harassment have been done by the claimant towards complainant.
Next, we move to the reasons behind this sexual harassment issue. So the first reason behind this issue is the power differential. The top cause of sexual harassment complaints come from the power dynamics at work. Many cases involve senior level officers abusing their power to sexually harass and intimidate other person. Victims are often pressured into sexual acts because they are offered professional favors or they fear that they will lose their job if they refuse to their supervisors. So the second reason is a culture that implies acceptance. In a relaxed work environment, there is often a wing-wing, not office culture that is accepting of an employee's quirky yet inappropriate behavior. Although some people may be comfortable in that environment, saying things like, "Oh, that is just how it is," others may be offended and feel uncomfortable, which actually can be lead to sexual harassment complaints. So the last reason is not understanding what is actually a sexual harassment. Some employees don't fully comprehend what counts as sexual harassment at their workplace. They might not realize that by greeting a colleague with a kiss on the cheek or complimenting their appearance is actually grounds for a sexual harassment complaint.
NTUC has been a representative of labour in Malaysia. Therefore, NTUC always supports and gives full commitment to any trade union that stands for the employees' right. NTUC voices out on behalf of the employees and advises them in order to resolve their problem that arises, such like sexual harassment. In the Sun Daily, it mentioned that Dato' Abdul Halim Mansor, the Malaysian Trades Union Congress (MTUC) president, said MTUC was committed to the government's consent to ratify the Elimination of Violence and Harassment in the World of Work Convention. He said the convention was in line with MTUC's policies and goals in defense of employees. Now, we will look at related act of the sexual harassment issue. In 2012, sexual harassment was included under Part 15A Employment Act 1955. As mentioned by Auni just now, definition to sexual harassment was given under Section 2 in this Act. Meanwhile, under Section 81A until 81G, it states how to complain sexual harassment at workplace and the mandatory duty to inquire by the employer on sexual harassment complaints. It also lists down appropriate actions to be taken by the employer if sexual harassment is proven. I'll continue with related section in Industrial Relations Act 1967. So, if you are dismissed unfairly or resign your job due to sexual harassment, Section 20 of the Industrial Relations Act 1967 can help you to get reinstatement or compensation in lieu through the Industrial Relations Department if it is proven unjust.
Okay, the first suggestion is create effective employment documentation. A well-drafted employment contract together with a comprehensive set of policies should detail the standard of performance and the conduct expected of an employee. The policies should also outline the procedure which should be followed when the standard are breached. Ensure that copies of all employees' employment contract are kept and that the company's policy and procedure have been communicated to and are accessible to your staff. Okay, the second suggestion is provide regular training on information on sexual harassment to all staff and management. Conduct regular training session for all staff and management on sexual harassment and the organization policy. This training should be behaviorally based, which means it should increase knowledge and understanding of specific behaviors that may amount to sexual harassment. In conclusion, gender discrimination in the workplace has negatively impact on the performance of the companies and institutions both directly and indirectly. This bias is also against the human right as human conscience is applied more at work and not just the instead. In addition, gender discrimination should not be treated because women workers also have their own strengths and capabilities. As workers deserve to be treated with respect and dignity, the authorities must ensure that employers are not engaged in abusive practice against workers and in their organization.